Hi there, welcome to ontrackTV. My name is Jonathan, and today we're going to be looking at improving our basic HTML web page using imagery. I'm going to show you the image element tag, the different attributes you can put into it as well. So you have the source tag, which defines what image you're putting in, the alt or alternative attribute, which allows you to define some text that will show up if the image doesn't load or will be read aloud by screen readers for people who are visually impaired, for instance. And lastly, if your image is too large when it's brought in by default, you can set a width and a height attribute to constrain that proportion and just make it a bit more manageable within your page. Enough talking from me, let's dive straight in. Okay, so this is the basic HTML page we made in our last lesson, and it's simple enough. It just contains text which is contained within the body element and the paragraph elements within that. I want to spruce it up a bit more now, and the very first step most people will want to do is adding in an image. So we need an image element tag. An image is simply img for image. Now the image element is a special one. It doesn't have a closing element like paragraph does and body does. Instead, it's all the same. It's all the one tag. So you would end it like so. To actually include the image into the element, you need to use the source attribute. So src for source equals 2 quotation marks, where our source of our image will go. Now on my computer, in the same area that this web page is contained, I have an image called sailing, and I also have to include the file type, and in this case it's a JPEG. If you have an animated GIF, you need to put in dot or .gif into the end of it. So if I go up to File and then Save, and I refresh my page, you'll notice we now have an image in our website. But because it's quite large, the original is, I now need to apply another attribute, the width attribute, in order to constrain the size of it. So in this case, I'm probably going to say 300 pixels will be the width. Again, I go up to File and Save, and then I go over to Refresh. The image is now much, much smaller, exactly 300 pixels in width. The final attribute that you should include in your image tags is the alt, or alternative attribute. This attribute is used for when the web page, for some reason, can't get the source file for the image or can't load it. Maybe there's a slow internet connection and you need to display something instead. For instance, if I called my sailing file something else and I went to File, Save, and I refresh, we get this didn't load image icon. If I put in the alt attribute, sailing photo, again, File, Save, and refresh, now when the image doesn't load, we'll at least have some text within the area, at least informing the person what was meant to be found there. It's also very useful for people with disabilities, maybe perhaps who are blind, and are using the screen reader. The alt, or whatever text is contained within the alt attribute, will be read aloud by the computer for that person. So again, to recap, image element is a self-contained element, no open and closing tag, it's just all one tag. The source attribute is where you put in your file name and address. The width attribute and height attributes can be used to change the size of your image, and then the alt or alternative attribute is used for screen readers or when the image can't be loaded, displaying some text. So In that lesson, we saw HTML images. We saw the image element tag, as well as some attributes that you can put into it to give it some context. The source attribute, which allows you to define the actual image that you want to put in. We used an image on our computer already within the same folder. You can also use a web address. You just need to right-click on the image that you have online and copy the image address and put that into the source attribute instead. We also saw the alt or alternative attribute, which allows screen readers to have a piece of text to read aloud, as well as showing some text if the image doesn't load for whatever reason. Maybe the computer can't find it, or maybe there's a slow internet connection and it just times out. And lastly, we saw the width attribute, which works the same as the height attribute, where you can constrain the size of your image based off of a pixel size. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.